Welcome to episode 97, I'm pretty sure, of the Podunk Climate Podcast. With me once again is the co-host with the most, Lyman Smith. How's it going, Lyman?
Good. How are you?
All right. So we have a guest, to no one's surprise, unless, of course, you don't ever pay attention to what I share, which you probably don't. But that's okay. I'm going to let it go this time. This week we have a friend with us, and I should call him a friend. We're in a secret group together. He's a good guy. He hosts a Leap of Doubt podcast, and we're going to talk a little bit about Satanism. So hold on, I gotta play the creepy intro music, which is
Spooky season.
Luke's ritual. I can't read that. You know what the name of it is. So
Something ritual meditation.
yeah, so to fit in with the spooky season, and as well to talk about the Satanic Temple with us is the man with the plan, the guy who makes emotional look sexy. Nathan Dickey, how's it going, Nathan?
Good. That was a hell of an intro you came up with just on the fly like that.
That's what I do. I'm a professional. Professional what? I don't know, but I'm a professional. And I can't turn this off. So how you doing, Nate?
I'm doing okay. How are you?
All right. So as anybody who knows, pays attention, like I said, to my post knows, we have you on to talk about the Satanic Temple. First of all, I want you to tell everybody a little bit about yourself in general, if you don't mind.
In general, my name is Nathan Dickey. I live in Southern Oregon. I host a podcast, as you said, A Leap of Doubt, which is a celebration of science, secular humanism, and the courage it takes to embrace an evidence-based life of doubt and questioning. That's the tagline. It's a mouthful, but I memorized it because I say it all the time. It's not catchy, but that's okay. And there's not much more interesting about me than that, as far as our purposes here are concerned. But if you want to know if you don't want to know some brief background, like, oh, what did you study and what are your credentials? I don't have any, and I studied journalism at a university in Southern Oregon, and I don't have a job in it, and I do my own thing through podcasting. So that's about all the background I think is relevant for what we're talking about here.
Yeah, probably. I mean, there's plenty of other interesting things about you, but that's for another time and another place. Yeah, exactly right. So and to your point, you're a journalist guy, a journalism degree, and you aren't doing that. I am 45 and have a computer degree and don't do shit. So just know that I'm a failure. So you're fine.
Oh, you do a podcast, so that's something. There's some overlap. There's computer stuff, journalism stuff, and that's what we're both doing. So.
Well, Lyman's the hacker guy.
So I just get called out for searching for memes in the bathroom. Nah,
hey, I mean, we all are the meme masters. So.
It's true. Although I will say that I've had some listeners message me directly and say that they're like, I really like your podcast, but what you should really be doing is ASMR recordings. Because people have told me that I would be a good ASMR track recorder.
I can see that.
Is that the thing where a sound makes you cool, feel good, or I can't.
Yeah.
Or they sit there and they're like,
yeah. They do sounds and little techniques with their fingers and make little noises that simulate being touched or brushed physically. and like they do certain techniques where they like whisper into the mic, so it simulates somebody whispering into your ear while you're trying to sleep.
Okay. I mean, that sounds interesting.
Some of it I don't get. Admittedly, some of it I don't get, but some of it, like I get it.
Each to his own. I don't know.
I mean, somebody told me that they turn my podcast on when they're trying to sleep, and I don't know how I feel about that.
Yeah,
but...
I don't. Yeah, I don't. I'm gonna take that the right way. Just don't tell me what you meant. I'm just gonna assume in my head you meant. All right. So, like I said in the intro, the main reason, other than you're awesome friend of ours, to have you on is your recent induction to the Satanic Temple. Why don't you go ahead and tell us a little bit why you chose to do this and what it means to you?
Oh, did you just cut yourself off?
Did I?
No.
I shouldn't.
Okay. Okay. It just sounded like you stopped abruptly. So, what the Satanic Temple means to me and why I chose to be affiliated with it. Well, a big part of it is that I think the Satanic Temple, and we'll talk more about what that is in depth, I'm sure, as we go on to review this documentary, Hail Satan. To me, it represents kind of the psychological, emotional side of human reasoning. So there's the logical side that doesn't really place a lot of emphasis on emotions and feelings, which is important. It has its place because science doesn't care about your feelings. Facts don't care about your feelings. But there's another dimension to human nature, and that's the emotional and psychological element. And when science tries to go into that dimension, it's often labeled with the designator soft science, as opposed to like the hard sciences like physics. But I think the artistic and cultural and poetic aspects of human nature are really captured in the tenets that the Satanic Temple espouses. And I think that aspect of human nature, the poetic, the cultural, the artistic, the literary, is a good representation of what I believe overall. It rounds out my worldview as a secular humanist with the science on one side and the science and skepticism on one side, and the more what some might disparagingly call the touchy-feely stuff on the other. But I think that touchy-feely stuff is actually really important. How's that for starters?
No, that's cool. So here's a question. I mean, some might ask, why do you need to be part of an organization? Why not just be that way anyway? Why do you need to feel the need to put a label on it? Maybe.
I would say that Satan is a representation, or Satan as a representation of rebellion against dogmatic thinking, against tyranny, against authoritarianism and fascism, is useful as an image and as kind of a way of drawing people together. We do not believe Satan exists, obviously. The Satanic Temple is a non-theistic organization. I can't speak for every member, but I personally am an atheist and non-supernaturalist all the way. But I find value in the image of a figure, a symbolic figure, who stands against the things I mentioned earlier: dogmatic thinking, tyranny, authoritarianism. So it's kind of a... I can't think of the word at the moment because I blank on words all the time when I'm talking live, but symbolic images and artistic expression can draw people together into a single cause much more effectively than dry academic appeals can, I think.
Would you
I don't
say
know.
it's along the same lines as what people get out of like children's fables, so to speak, where there's a story, but it's like the principle of the characters, their choices, behaviors, things like that?
Yeah, I think mythology and story and narrative is deeply embedded in our psyche. There's evolutionary reasons for why narrative speaks to us so strongly, why we will go to a movie theater and stand in line for 7 days to see a Star Wars movie. I think there's something very interesting in human nature that was ingrained in us in evolution that is drawn toward story and image. And I think that the Satanic Temple and the kind of strain of Satanism that I identify with is one such image that speaks to, like I said earlier, the more poetic and emotional side of me. Because for the longest time, I wasn't a well-rounded person. I used to be religious as a child and teenager, very religious in a dogmatic way of thinking in Christianity. When I escaped out of that, I embraced kind of the hard logic, the hard science, skepticism, facts. This is as a way of kind of overcompensating. Like this is what I need to focus on, and this is what I need to dive into and involve myself with. But I think it's really important to, I think what Satanism represents to me personally is a way of rounding out my personality as somebody who is interested in story and myth and poetry and all that good stuff.
Well, I feel like you pretty much answered all the questions. I don't really have anything to follow up. What about you, Lyman?
Do you think that part of the reason why it might be misunderstood by some people is the theatrics of it?
Yep. The theatrics of it and the ritual is a huge part. To me, it's just plain old fun. People kind of look down on theatrics and ritual as unnecessary or almost kind of obnoxious even. Like if you watched to the very end of the documentary that we're kind of going to discuss, I think, the Hail Satan documentary about the Satanic Temple. If you watch to the very end, past the credits, they throw in a very brief clip of a newscast person saying or mentioning that the statue of Baphomet that they had managed to get erected on, I think it was the Arkansas state capitol grounds, they said it was eventually taken down because they ruled that the Satanic Temple was a parody religion, which is really ironic because I think the ritual and the theatrics lends itself to that perception of being a parody religion. But we are pretty much the only religion who explicitly and from the beginning openly admits that these are theatrics. You look at the theatrics in Christianity, like the communion and the mass and the singing of the worship songs, the Pentecostal gyrations, everything that churches do on a regular basis every week inside the walls of churches are the theatrics, are the rituals, but they won't admit that they're just that.
The baptisms, the everything. I don't see a whole lot of difference between it, honestly. And I think it's always kind of ironic when people think that of one side. I always think it's kind of interesting when people will sit there and say, well, this performance or these theatrics are invalid, but then they'll go and stand in line to watch, the Book of Mormon on Broadway, or watch, 50 different theater houses do, Othello or something. It's like,
that's a really good point. When you go out on the weekend to the bars and go dancing, you are engaging in theatrical ritual. When you flirt with people at the bar that you're dancing at, you're engaging in a socially accepted ritual that involves theatrics. So many aspects of human nature and behavior and action are theatrical, and they're a ritual that humans have developed over hundreds of thousands of years. And there's evolutionary psychology in there and lots of other stuff. It's to deny ourselves that play, that space to play out our fantasies is detrimental to our psychology in the long run, I think. There's what some psychologists in the 20th century called the liminal space. And this is a space that kind of a psychological space that hangs between pure fantasy, where you can't tell the difference between fantasy and reality. It's truly delusion in the psychiatric sense of the word. Schizophrenics who suffer this condition can't distinguish between fantasy and reality. Then on the other end of the extreme, there's people who have completely divorced fantasy from reality. They live in reality. They're logical, rational people, which is important to be. And then there's a liminal space where people who are in touch with reality can also enter into a space of play where they understand that the rules are slightly different than in everyday life, but they can still tell the difference. An example of this would be Dungeons and Dragons. When people are gathered together to play Dungeons and Dragons, they're playing in a liminal space between fantasy and reality, because there are actual mathematical and logical rules that apply to the game, but it's also within the context of a fantasy world that the players are inventing together.
yeah, I mean, it's spooky season, October 31st. How many people are going to go and dress up as one thing or another, or dress up to go to a party?
Exactly.
I'm sorry. I need to go back to the parody religion part.
Mm-hmm.
What the fuck? I hadn't heard of this. Was this a Supreme Court ruling, or was this a district court, or what?
It wasn't Supreme Court. I know that. I'm not sure what court it was. Probably a district court. But yeah, if you watch that documentary past the end credits, they play a very brief clip before fully ending it of this newscast anchor lady saying, "Oh yeah, the court ruled that the statue has to come down because it's not a valid religion; it's a parody religion." And there's also another thing funny about that, in addition to what I said about it earlier. Christianity is a parody of every previous version of Christianity that came before it.
What's your definition of parody, too? I mean, I'm just curious what law. I mean, it's a sincerely held belief. Isn't that what the definition is, as far as if it qualifies as a religion?
I don't know if the term sincerely held belief is encoded in law or not. I'd have to. I'm sure it varies from state to state and district to district, but that sounds very much a subjective kind of way to define religion, or quote unquote authentic religion. You can't define what's authentic religion and what's not, because you're already dealing with a subjective issue.
Well, and that language, sincerely held belief, is used over and over in a lot of those lawsuits about, well, I don't want to bake a cake for you because you're gay, or this or that, or it's
fucking hypocrisy. You can use it for your fucking bigotry, but we can't use it for like if I want to discriminate against a guy wearing a fucking Trump hat, I can't say fuck no. I'm not. I can say it in my store. Fuck no, you redneck piece of shit. You are not buying a cake at my store or any beard products because I would have a beard product store. No, you're not getting the balm, no wax, nothing. Get out of my store.
Wow, Chris. I like that.
You know what? Take their money and invest it in something that destroys their own beliefs.
Okay, so that's fair. So let's say I give a certain portion of my proceeds of every sale to go to like LGBT causes, or I mean anything, any liberal AOC's personal accounts. Oh Jesus, that would kill them. They can't stand her.
That's how you get those people to leave you alone.
Yeah, wasn't there a campaign where people were donating to Planned Parenthood in Mike Pence's name?
Oh yeah, there was a lot of people. There was a independent campaign just of people that were making small donations to all sorts of things in the name of Mike Pence.
Yeah, I remember it was Periods for Pence was one group. Like, that was their whole thing, you know.
Awesome.
So yeah. So I think we pretty well described what the Satanic Temple is within this kind of general idea. Let's go to the documentary itself. Now I feel like this documentary as an overall, the big picture here, does a pretty good job of explaining what it actually is, what its precepts are, some of its history, and some of the controversies and schisms that are, go figure, in any human group, of course, any grouping. So, first of all, let me get your both of y'all's overall view of what you think of the documentary.
Do you want to go first, or should I go first?
I will go first because it's pretty succinct. Because I knew very little superficial bits from the internet and a few people that would mention it here and there. So it was, I think, more educational than I would have anticipated. And this may sound incredibly dumb, but for me, I would see the Satanic Temple or I would see the Church of Satan like intermixed in conversation, maybe inadvertently, maybe I wasn't paying attention, and I would misassociate the two, clearly knowing they're two different things, but I would misidentify them. So it was I had a general idea as to what it was, but not to the degree of how incredibly activist they are at all times, all over the place, because you don't hear about the little stuff. And I did see some familiar faces in the movie as well.
Yeah, there was American Darling Curl, Detrick Von Doom, a few other faces I recognized, and some people I know personally.
People I recognized because there's a lot of people from Arizona and Phoenix, and I didn't know them personally, but like going to different events over the years, a lot of them had familiar faces.
Yeah. When you talk about being kind of confused about the different groups, are you referring to the Satanic Temple versus the Church of Satan? That was Anton LaVey's thing in the 60s, because that's something that's worth talking about that a lot of people get confused about. They either think they're the same thing or they just get the two mixed up in other ways.
For me, it was mostly just interchanging the two inadvertently when I would read something or hear somebody talk. And it wasn't that I had a preconceived notion about, because I knew they were technically different. I didn't know if they were like different denominations type situation. I knew, from what I knew of Anton LaVey's stuff, not amazing as far as him. I'm not a fan. So I didn't entirely, and the people I knew that were involved with the Satanic Temple did not, like the type of people they were, did not fit what I knew of Anton LaVey's stuff. So I was always a little bit ignorant and a little on the fence as to how to feel about the whole thing, other than I liked a lot of the political stuff that they were doing and pushing the envelope.
Yeah, that's the great thing about the Satanic Temple is how politically activist they are. And you read, if you search for Satanic Temple online, you'll see a lot of news stories. First and foremost, you'll see a lot of local news stories of local chapters doing things in their own areas, from big things like protests and like doing fundraisers for things like Planned Parenthood and escorting women who are being harassed by conservative anti-abortion protesters, to even little things like adopting highways and cleaning up parks and helping homeless people. So there's a huge swath and spectrum of different social, civic, political actions that the Satanic Temple involves itself in. And this is in stark contrast to the Church of Satan, which was Anton LaVey's endeavor in the 1960s. They made it an explicit point not to be political at all. And yet, somehow, at the same time, which is my biggest criticism of Church of Satan, is that they embraced a kind of Malthusian, Randian self-interest philosophy of laissez-faire capitalism and quote-unquote rational self-interest. And that was a huge part of their plank. And they do view themselves to this day as the only true Satanists, kind of like the Catholics and the Protestants. But the difference being that the Satanic Temple will not deny them their right to call themselves Satanists, but the Church of Satan, if you kind of look at the Twitter wars that have gone on between the two groups, they will say, no, we have, like, Satanism is our thing. You can't have it. We are the only true Satanists.
They're like those people that are like, oh yeah, you like that band? I heard them like 5 years before they were ever popular. And it's like, it becomes a pissing match over who knows what.
Yeah. So I remember reading the Satanic Bible back when I was in my 20s or whatever. And I remember thinking, yeah, this is basically just, was it do unto others as thou wilt, do as thou what thou wilt, as long as you harm none, I believe was the phrasing.
They did a riff on Aleister Crowley's famous phrase, "Do as thou wilt shalt be the whole of the law."
Yeah, it was something like that. Yeah,
they modified that, I think, to include or to qualify not harming children or animals, which is good on them. But then they also said, if your enemy in the Church of Satan's tenets in the Satanic Bible, there's a passage that says something like, if one person strikes you on the cheek, bash their face in mercilessly. So
yeah.
It was something to in like their version of like commandments or tenets or whatever. I remember seeing a version like a long time ago when I was in high school that was basically like, if somebody like gets in your way or you or yours, basically destroy them. Mm-hmm. And that seems like a pretty
They also believe in actual magic. If you read the current high priest, Peter Magus, if you read his book, The Satanic Scriptures, he actually has a chapter on how to achieve time travel. He goes into a meditative state and visits other time periods. So they do have like, it's like Ayn Rand playing dress up, and it's also with some weird magical beliefs thrown in.
Right. So That's bullshit. Now I do remember.
Oh, you mean it's like when God talks to the prophets?
You shut up. You shut up, sir. That's been around for ages. It's real. Okay.
Clearly, old means real.
So yeah, I do remember that. I remember the first part being, and what I thought at the time was humanist, which is not really humanist. Which by that I mean that it was very. It wasn't religious at all. It was just basically look out for yourself. And yes, that's Randy. And as I understand now, but back then I'm like, well, that seems fairly commonsensical, right? But then the second part's like fucking spells and shit.
Yeah.
Like, okay, all right. I don't need that part. Can we not? I was with you
Anton.
until the spells, you know.
Hold on a second. I'm going to get a show and tell for you guys real quick and to step away for a second.
And on that note, what's your beer tonight, Chris?
Yes, I'm glad you asked. It's the official beer of the show, the Lagunitas Imperial Stout, which I'm pissed off
is
about because
that's the same one you've had the last two, right?
Yes, and this is we're now having official beer. I'm going to ask them if I can they'll give me money to advertise their shit,
or at least free beer to drink on their
free
show.
Free beer is my main goal, but I am willing to advertise because the other, well, actually, they don't have the other. They're all the other such garbage. Anyway,
I picked another oddball. It's the Bloodline Blood Orange something or other ale.
I've seen that before.
I've still got some holiday special Slayer ale in my refrigerator.
What the fuck?
Yeah.
Slayer?
Okay,
Slayer. It's a sleigh like reindeer sleigh.
Oh.
With an R at the end. Slayer.
I thought I was gonna say like has been. Does this taste like has been old men? Is that what it tastes like?
Oh, it's like
sorry.
Yeah, Slayer with the same font as the metal band. Anyway, in regards to the Church of Satan's weird ass magical beliefs, the worst book that Anton LaVey wrote, possibly the worst book he wrote, was this one right here. I don't know if you can see that. The Satanic Witch. And
is this a sequel?
It's one of his books. He wrote it for women.
Oh my god!
I'm sure it has some good tidbits in there.
Because of course women want to read a book written by a man to know how to be a
how to woman better.
How to woman better. Here's the blurb at the back. The Satanic Witch is not designed for Barbie dolls, but women cunning and crafty enough to employ the workable formulas within, which instantly surpass the entire catalog of self-help tomes and New Age idiocies.
Is that it? I mean,
what the fuck does that even mean?
I know what it means. And he's trying to.
There is more.
Go ahead.
The Satanic Witch best reflects the discoveries Anton made in his younger days, working the carny shows and mit camps. This is undiluted gypsy lore regarding the forbidden knowledge of seduction and manipulation.
I love it. I love how he's trying to make it sound like he's a feminist when he's just all about fucking catering to patriarchal bullshit. That's exactly what that is. And it makes the women see, that's me, I'm seductive. What? You know, it's trying to make he wants to manipulate you. You know,
I find it best to take life advice from a carny.
Me too, to be fair.
Well, I mean, honestly, because they've been through some shit. They've seen like
they have the
lower. Now, a guy maybe,
but how to be a woman
definitely.
Like
if it's
I don't
woman.
know. To get more specific, I take a lot of advice from the burlesque shows, which I guess can be like a subculture of carny. But I'm a big fan of burlesque myself.
I've only been to two.
One.
And they were drag burlesques, weirdly enough.
Yeah,
like I've never been to any all female ones or all male ones. It was a mix of it was really interesting. It was like a goth nightclub that they had in Phoenix that I used to go to.
So I think we're getting a little bit off
We are.
So
That's what we do.
which is fine, but so Anton LaVey, Church of Satan, definitely not affiliated with the Satanic Temple. And you're right, they do fight on Twitter, which is hilarious to me.
I actually have a
only
question
because
for. Sorry,
Go ahead.
we got latency there. As a person involved with the Satanic Temple, how did you feel that video represented it?
I felt it represented it fairly well. Like, I think it was well-rounded. It was for the most part objective. Like, they didn't take sides. They kind of, which I, as a journalist or somebody who's trained as a journalist, really appreciated. They just kind of did the footage, covered the events and the people, and let the events and the people speak for themselves. There wasn't a lot of editorial commentary butting in to it allowed the viewer to make up his or her own mind about what was going on with the group, which I think is really important. And they showed the good side, they showed the bad side, some of the controversies, like when that woman Jax, I don't know if I can recall her full name, was basically kicked out of the group. There are controversies like that are covered, that give a fuller picture of kind of the basically it's not all roses and flowers and whatever, however that turn of phrase goes.
Whatever black roses and I don't know, whatever plants there are, and whatever you want to, So we move on kind of, I guess, the sort of the everyday, these documentaries always go this way. So you have kind of the background part, right? And it's interspersed with like the everyday, the everyman Satanist, right? And so we kind of start with Lucian Greaves or whatever. And I have to ask, did they get him just for the fucked up eye thing? That had to play a role.
I think
Don't
he has
lie
like
to me. Don't lie. I love the guy, but come on,
I love him too, but I don't know him, so I couldn't answer that question. But I do love his eye, and I think he probably has like a specially made contact lens for that.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
That's what I'm guessing.
All right, that's a good call. So yeah, it kind of starts off that way. I like kind of how it eases into. They're like in the office, and like they didn't say this. They say, "Satanic Temple, how can I help you?" But I mean, they might as well, something like that. So, I mean, so the kind of the day-to-day operations, I guess you could say, of the Satanic Temple. Kind of some of the things they do. What is? I mean, as far as the documentary, what do you recall? Some of the things they did. I know getting the Baphomet statue up in Arkansas was one of them. But
they had the after school Satan kids group for which I just love, and they had the woman who the concerned citizen woman who came in yelling and screaming, like, "Why are you doing this?" And that was pretty entertaining. And you mentioned the statues, which has been, or the statue of Baphomet with the children standing on either side of him, and a lap specially made to be sat on for people who want to take pictures. It's been moved around, like from state to state. They're still trying to find a home for it.
What I thought was really awesome was the torso was modeled after Iggy Pop.
Yeah, that was awesome.
Yeah, that was great.
That was good. I didn't know that, but
although now, come on, it's time to put the shirt on Iggy. I mean, come on.
Listen, he's one of the few people who doesn't have to. Ever.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was about to say.
He's Iggy.
All right, fair.
Matthew McConaughey, though, he can go ahead and put it on.
Oh, I'm glad you're the judge of who needs to wear it.
I am the arbiter of t-shirts.
Yeah, that's good. So, yeah.
But you're not the arbiter of pants, sir.
That's Winnie the Pooh.
Mm-hmm.
You let that poo hang out, girl. Let me tell you. Anyway, so Yeah, I thought, and you're talking about the after school Satan thing. I remember covering that on the old pod when I had the first podcast because it was in Florida and it was a response to mostly the Good News Club, which is a garbage fucking propaganda.
See, I'd
Christian
never heard of the
propaganda
Good
thing.
News Club.
Oh, I was involved with the Good News Club when I was 13 or 14 years old.
Well, fuck you, Nathan. The
How
old
long,
you,
how long
not
ago
this
was that?
one.
I'm trying to figure out if certain things sound familiar to me just because, like, in the last, like, decade or two, it's been a thing, or if I had anything in my school district.
2000, 2001.
Okay.
When I was 13, 14 years old. My parents got me and my sister involved in it. And yes, it is a garbage organization. And yes, they do get their talons into teens and the children as well. And
It's gross. It's just
it is gross. Mm-hmm. I mean, I know better now, but I didn't know better then.
I know
About what the group was really about and what their agenda is.
So is it basically just like Jesus Bible thumpy stuff?
Mm-hmm. Yep, it's proselytizing to young kids who don't know better and threatening them.
Oh no. See, when you get them young, what you do is you bribe them with candy. And that's what they do. They get you with the candy and they intersperse it with, well, Jesus was fine. He died for your sins.
Here's a Reese's.
Yeah, here's a Reese's. You get the fire and brimstone shit later when you grow up, when you're already indoctrinated and you don't have a fucking choice anymore. So,
Something like that.
Or, well, some people are like indoctrinated with that fire and brimstone, scared the shit out of the kids. That's true. But I would say if you're talking about the milder, more moderate forms of evangelical Christianity, that's the kind of thing, because it happened to me. And I just took the candy and said, fuck you. So I'll take the candy. You can take my dick in your mouth.
Wow.
Not that that's a bad, I'm sorry. That, you know what I'm saying? Okay, that was homophobic, just so you know. Okay. So yeah, I do recall that. And I just thought it was hilarious, especially living in the South. Because y'all don't live in the South, strangely enough. But they lose their shit. They lose it bad. I mean, you just don't. They think Satan is literally, I guess, sitting next to him having dinner. I don't know what's happening. They think it's a literal like thing, a force in life, an everyday force. And it's fucking frightening, really.
They cannot conceive that somebody might embrace Satan as a symbol or a metaphor. They can't conceive of it.
Well,
I don't understand why metaphors are so foreign to any of these people. Like, even on its surface, even if you're Christian or something, I mean, to take the Bible for as garbage piece of literature it is, literally, it doesn't make sense. Like, are we gonna is the Elf on the Shelf? It's the original Elf on the Shelf. It's it's Elf on the Shelf for grown-ups, but it's like 2,000 years old.
Who was it that said? I can't recall who said it, but the Bible is the Rorschach ink blot test for the morally challenged.
I could see that.
I like that.
I dig that.
Although I have to say it could go the other way too, because Martin Luther King and some humanists, because there are Christian humanists, let's be real.
Yep.
Took it the other. So yeah, it could be it is a Rorschach test, and you could take it, but that's the thing with a book like that. You could interpret it any way you fucking want to, right? Because it's so fucking nonsensical and it's so vague. I mean, that
it's more than just that it's nonsensical on its surface. It's that it's a copy of 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 a copy, and it's been altered and reworked and reinterpreted and recrafted so many times that it bears zero resemblance to whatever it might have originally said. And people have this idea in their heads that the Bible was just dropped down from heaven in its complete form one day, and there it
love
is.
that. I love it. Literally the word of God.
It's
But
the
anyway,
worst. It's the worst game of telephone ever.
Exactly.
I'm getting off it again. I can't help it. We can't. We're
what we
gonna do. This show is gonna be like this. Just so y'all know.
Here,
If you don't like,
I'll
if you don't
bring
like
us back.
stream of consciousness, then go somewhere else. Okay. But back to Lucian. Okay, I like Lucian as a head dude, right? He seems really calm. He seems pretty. I guess you have to be a leader, right? You can't be reactionary. You can't be all just getting pissed off at everybody, right? You kind of have to be diplomatic, regardless of what organization you're in, I guess. So, what was your impression of Lucian?
He's very soft-spoken, mild-mannered. Doesn't force himself into the limelight unless it serves an actual purpose for the immediate need of whatever they're trying to accomplish. And even then, he doesn't speak much. He's not concerned with presenting a polished image of himself. He just kind of puts himself out there as he is and lets people judge for themselves. And if their judgment is about him is shitty, he just doesn't give a fuck. He just kind of goes on about his business and lets people have their own impressions of him. That's kind of my first impression of Lucian.
Yeah, I don't. Yeah, that's pretty much on point. Yeah. What I feel like they're a little vague about the actual, unless I'm just misremembering how the Satanic Temple actually was founded and kind of what its origins were.
Well, it was founded in 2013 by Lucian and a partner of his, who I'm not recalling his name at the moment. But it was essentially a response to the older tradition of Satanism, but with an emphasis on political action. And that was the main, I think, diverging point where they said we need something new and we need something more vibrant, because the Church of Satan had gotten itself to the point where they held no conventions. That was actually an official tenet or principle of LaVey's church, is that no conventions, no media. Oh, they have a few media spokesmen. I interviewed one for not the podcast I run now, but my previous podcast. But for the most part, they have zero media presence, zero conventions. Members don't network with each other. In fact, a lot of them are in competition with each other, and very few of them get along by their own account. So Lucian Graves looks at that and says, what if we do have a movement of people who do network, who do get together at conventions, who do political action, who do something to create positive change in the world, instead of just kind of sequestering yourself in a niche of irrelevancy and pretending like you're superior to the rest of the masses. Because that's another thing about the old Satanism of LaVey, is that they view themselves as superior to the rest of humankind, and for that reason kind of sequester themselves away. And they are a socially irrelevant group at this point.
Well, isolationism doesn't really bode well if you want to exist in any capacity that's relevant, and especially if you're trying to change something. I mean, you have to be able to.
Well, that sounds suspiciously like white atheist dude bros sitting around preaching from their ivory towers about how the SJW snowflakes are ruining the world while sitting there and being offended by the SJW snowflakes. Ironically enough, so
Or the white dudes in their pickup trucks.
Mm.
they're a
On YouTube.
whole. Oh, that's a whole separate. No, that's more of that's a different.
It's a different box of candy in the same.
Well, it
garbage
is.
shelf.
I mean,
It's
no.
actually really interesting fodder for psychologists to study. They could do a whole study on the phenomenon of white guys in pickup trucks ranting about America.
I wish they wouldn't really. Can we?
When was
do
the last
something
time we
else?
ever saw any like SJW like sitting in their Prius or whatever they drive,
That's it.
like ranting about something
That's
like
it. That's perfect. You nailed it. I don't even have a Prius. I'm gonna go find one. I'm gonna rent a Prius just so I can sit in there and do that.
Yeah, well, as soon as this is out in internet land, somebody maybe will find it and do a parody,
I hope so.
an
I
SJW
should.
version of the man in the pickup truck.
That would be fucking perfect. Anyway, so again, floating off. But Lucian is the guy, and there's always the guy who brings, people together for good or evil. But in this instance, it seemed like he brought them together for a pretty good purpose, which was, generally speaking, of course, most people have heard about the Satanic Temple as far as kind of trying to challenge religious, creeping religious virus into our society, which is supposed to be secular. But increasingly, it seems that religion is kind of inching its way over the wall like fucking kazoo. You like that? You like that?
Kazoo?
Anyway, you ever seen kazoo? It's a It fucking creeps over.
Oh, okay,
I thought you
yeah.
said kazoo.
Me too. I was
You
like,
know
what the fuck is he talking about?
Kudzu, the creeping plant that like comes over stuff
Yeah,
and
no.
destroys it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I meant.
Oh,
See,
like the plant in the movie The Ruins. Have you seen that?
no, but it's probably what it is. It's always the one that's on
it's like
power lines.
It's like a vine and
yeah,
not like not so much.
you fucking ruined it. Fuck you.
I made it better.
Right. So anyway, it's creeping, and the Satanic Temple is trying to sort of stop that creeping from the separation, the wall between the church and state.
They are a great ally for organizations like the American Humanist Association or the Organization for the Advancement of the I'm going to butcher the name of the organization. Barry Lynd's organization for keeping church and state separate, because the Satanic Temple really is changing the way people think and talk about religion in America, and it's because they are providing a counterpoint to Christian nationalists and Christian dominionists who think that their religion has privilege over all others. That's the main value of the Satanic Temple, in my view, is that they are challenging that narrative. And it's a persistent and pervasive and insidious narrative that's if enough people take it seriously, if enough people actually believe that Christian religion has privilege over all others, then that popular belief could be all it takes to allow the Christian theocrats to get what they want and get their foot into the door. And it's already starting to happen. Their foot is in the door, and the Satanic Temple, as part of their most valuable contribution, is really pushing back against that.
For sure.
So
Were you
let's
trying
talk
to
about-
Were you trying to think of the FFRF?
No. I was
Americans United for Church and States, maybe is what he's talking.
Americans United. Yeah, that's the one I was trying to think of. But the Freedom from Religion Foundation is also another wonderful, wonderful organization that you should donate to if you can, as often as you can.
For sure.
So here's the thing, and I think a lot, not even just people who are still interested, but we kind of touched on it earlier, is the whole idea of the parody religion, right?
Mm-hmm.
So of course, religion is bullshit, right? But if you're just a regular Joe, everyday Joe, whatever, America, right? Okay, but it's not a real religion, right? It's not Christianity. It's not Islam. I mean, whatever. It's not a real religion. They just made this up to challenge the Christians, right? And I think this is an image issue they might have, is that people think they're just around just to piss off Christians.
I think that I can't speak for the whole organization or even for other members, but my personal impression is that that's just kind of goes along with the territory. I think it is a legitimate religious movement, and I do. In the same way that secular humanism can be viewed loosely as a religion. I think mockery and throwing things in the face of Christians who think they have privilege, or who do have privilege but think that they should have privilege, I should say. Excuse me. I think that's an important byproduct of their existence, but not necessarily the main reason they exist. Like in the beginning of the documentary Hail Satan, they talked about the black mass that they wanted to hold at Harvard, I think it was. Yeah. And the black mass is a real thing, or is a real thing now. The black mass is based on a fiction that medieval Christians believed in. Medieval Christians believed falsely that there was such a thing as a black mass, that real Satanists who actually worshipped a literal devil were performing in the woods. Mm-hmm. And that was a persistent belief at the time. And there are documents from the 14th, the 12th, and the 13th and 14th century. There are documents by Christian monks, I'm losing my voice, kind of describing what goes on in these so-called black masses and what TST does is essentially take those accounts, those bogus accounts, and turn it into something real. And they're like, oh, this is what you've been afraid of for thousands of years? Well, we're going to actually act it out. So I think that's kind of brilliant, personally.
Yeah, you said the back in the day, but as well as the Satanic Panic that happened kind of in the late 70s, early 80s. They thought that shit too. And if you've read Lawrence Wright's book, who's the same guy who wrote in Going Clear, he wrote a book about a case in, I want to say it's Oregon, no, it was Washington, where they were so convinced. It was like the Salem witch trials, right? They made shit up and it didn't really happen, but then they were just saying it happened, and then it caught fire. If you've ever read The Crucible or whatever, they just kept making shit up, and then it took a life of its own or whatever. I forgot the name of the book.
I wasn't aware that. I wasn't aware that Lawrence Wright wrote a book about that subject. That's interesting. I'll have to look into that.
No, I can't remember the name of it for some fucking reason. But the whole idea, the Satanic Panic was a big thing back in the day. The backmasking, the subliminal messages, all that bullshit.
Satanic
Weird Al Yankovic
playing your records backwards.
Yeah. Weird Al Yankovic. Yeah. Satan likes Cheese Whiz. That was the backward message he put on his record.
Right. But, so the whole absurdity and making fun of Christians has been a pastime in America for people like us for time immemorial. I think this is okay. So personally, I'm going to go ahead and just go ahead and introduce this. I don't know if it's a popular opinion. I hate when people say that. The not so popular opinion Oh, you're so brave. But anyway, so I guess I don't know. I guess
Stroke
I
your
mean,
beard for courage, Chris.
I'm going to step
away.
away. I'm going to step away for a second and get something to drink because my voice is cracking up.
Please,
Do it.
please. You're ruining the broadcast, man.
It was perfect until then.
But I don't know. I guess I wonder about the whole, and this kind of, they talk. There was this kind of schism, and that's, I don't know if you can hear us or not, but this whole idea that there was people who were in it for the social justice part, I guess you could call it.
You're talking about TST, right?
Yeah. And then there was people who are actually getting into like the whole ceremony thing. And it just, I don't know, something about it, and that's always kind of bothered me from the beginning of me hearing this stuff. And like I said, a parody religion, yes, I know. Religion is a parody. It doesn't need any help. Parody religion is like a fucking redundant, right? It's like,
well, and it's ironic too, because I mean, when the Mormons became a thing, the other Christian denominations said they weren't legitimate. They were, this, that, and the other thing, and clearly they're unfortunately a thing. But it's like everybody's more concerned with, like who the OG is and who's the most legitimate instead of actually like worrying about just being decent people. And
I think it's like they're purposely trying to. I know this is so bizarre, right? We're so used to religion being just purposely batshit crazy, and everybody's so serious about it. Well, they're purposely trying to be good, but that's not religion. It's almost like
it's because it has the word Satan, Chris, and I mean they picked.
Well, yeah, it's purposely provocative, and that's probably why. And it's so, like I said, it's so ironic. Well, it's obviously not religious because religions fucking hate a good time, and so obviously they hate people and they hate women. So a real religion hates women and people and make you suffer. This goddamn religion here,
and they
you can have fun. What kind of fucking religion is this? That's bullshit. It's a parody religion.
I would argue satire is a pretty powerful tool. And I mean, instead of sitting there saying someone else isn't legitimate, I think mocking them or satirizing them is a more cunning, strategical way to delegitimize somebody than to sit there on a pulpit and like talk about hellfire, brimstone, and false prophets. Like that's just, it's been done. It's like people are pretty immune to it now, generally, unless you're really steeped in it.
Yeah, so
I just don't understand why they're so threatened.
Yeah, I don't know. This like it's an anti-religion. That's their religion, anti-religion. It's kind of weird, actually. They did get what is it? The tax exempt status.
Yeah, like in the last couple of years.
Yeah. Which Scientology had to fight to get, which is funny. They basically threatened them because they had fucking like agents in the IRS. They had like fucking plans and shit. That's fucking. You're
fucking
worried about the
Satanic
Satanic Temple. You need to be worried about Scientology. That's some crazy fucking shit right there. But anyway, even the Satanic Temple has religious aspects, and that's the part that kind of. It's almost like there's the schism, as like I was talking about, between like I said, the SJW types, I guess you could say, and maybe the other one, they're more into the ceremonial part. And that almost feels like it's sort of like not like Church of Satan part where you're all doing the ceremonial stuff. Like they're all into that, and they don't seem to be so much into the other. And that kind of bugged me a little bit.
I mean, that is the consequence of anything, whether it's a political movement. The more mainstream it becomes, the more likelihood you're going to have people that just can't really behave themselves or take things too far one direction or the other direction, and they kind of lose sight of what it is, you know?
What do you think, Nathan? Do you have anything to add to that?
I kind of came in the middle of what you were talking about. So,
sorry. Yeah.
What was the question about?
I'm sorry. The idea of this kind of be this, like there's a group. This is what I saw in the documentary, was that there was a group that was kind of still on the SJW side, I guess you could call it, like the part where they're anti-religion. They're kind of using religion as a lever to fight against the Christians on like laws, for the separation of church and state.
Mm-hmm.
But then there seems to be ones. I don't know if this is a misconception. To me, it seemed like there were those who were more worried about the actual ceremonial aspect, and that they actually were kind of like so much the activist part. And I don't know if that's some kind of schism or what.
I'm really not sure. I don't know if I picked up on that. That sounds like maybe a subtle difference or a very subtle schism that I didn't necessarily pick up on as much.
It's possible. It just seemed like there were some people who weren't concentrated.
Like some people who just wanted to do the activism, and then other people who just wanted to do like the ritual fun stuff.
Yeah. You're right.
I think there's a lot of overlap between those two groups, but naturally, I think that people are going to fall into one or another interest just naturally. Like it's the same thing in the so-called skeptics movement. Some people are interested in debunking Bigfoot, some in cryptozoology in general. Some people are interested in fighting the vaccine fight, or fighting against vaccine misinformation and the anti-vaxxers. Some people are interested in defending GMOs and educating people about what GMOs really are and what they aren't. Some people are interested in fighting against creationism and intelligent design in the public schools. So there's like a wide range of interests and subject areas of interest, and a lot of wheelhouses and platforms, and people kind of choose what they want to be a part of as a focus and what they aren't so much a part of, but still kind of are okay with supporting. Like, so in the Satanic Temple, for instance, you'll have the people who are who just want the emotional and psychological outlet because it's therapeutic, as all ritual that's personalized is. And then you'll have the people who are interested primarily in activism. And I think both groups can get along. If they can't get along, that's probably an issue on the level of individuals and not so much on the organization itself.
I think I think both can serve a purpose to each other, because the people who are, as long as everybody's acting in good faith and not doing anything they shouldn't be, then they still together are different cogs of the machine that give the overall presentation that represents the overall perception of what they're individually or collectively trying to achieve. I mean, it's just like there are people that are willing to go, tip over cars and trash cans and smash windows, but there are some that are willing to stand with picket signs. And it's like, whether or not you agree with the methods on either side, it's the overall goal that's the most important.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, yeah, I guess that's true. So let's go ahead and do an overview overall of the documentary, since we're kind of ready new. And technically, we go on for 2 fucking hours, but nobody wants to listen to me for 2 hours. No, let me take that back. Nobody wants us to listen to Lyman for 2 hours.
Yeah,
I could carry it for a while. I can carry
You could.
it.
Listen to the sultry, sexy sound of my voice.
Oh yeah, no, you could do the AMSR. That might work actually. Maybe you need to do a podcast.
I just quoted Monsters Inc. by the way. So
You just took it.
Is
deep,
it bad? Is it bad that I've never seen that?
It is bad. Yeah.
You have a kid, and she has what?
It
15
actually.
kids or whatever.
Can I just say that Monsters Inc. actually has a very sophisticated and well-developed political activism theory in its message that
We
has to
should
do
do
with
that on another podcast. Messaging of children's movies.
Mhm.
Or as Casey sent me, idea for the next episode: truck nuts.
What
I
about
don't
them?
see the connection, but okay. So overall, I'll go ahead and give my kind of overall. As a documentary, it's got all the good parts of the documentary I like. It's got good editing. It's intersperses the kind of the past with the present, the kind of the not NA is not the right word. Every day with the kind of loftier stuff. So it was a good interspersal as a documentary. As a topic, I found it very interesting, and of course, people who don't know anything about it, I guess it depends because goddamn, imagine it's like me watching a Christian movie. I guess, like, except I laugh at it. These fuckers are going, "Oh my god!" They think there's literal Satan sitting right next to you. So, actually, that
Hilarious.
makes me. It's funny to me. That just the thought of that right now just makes me smile to myself. Okay, because that's fucking hilarious to me. You think a fucking it's like Zeus is fucking with you or something. Anyway, whatever. So, as a documentary, I enjoyed it. The topic was good, and it gave me a lot of insight into what it's actually about. So, I did want to say it says "Hail Satan." There's a question mark for some reason.
Satan? You know what? When I saw that, I keep on going back to the Saturday Night Live church lady.
And I just now thought of that. Yeah.
Could it be Satan?
Making sure you get Satan. Okay. So
Amazing.
yeah, I thought it was good. Taught you the good subject matter covering. So that's my overall review. What do you think, Lyman?
And I thought, as somebody who knew superficially a little bit here and there and this and that, I thought it was informative. It gave a good general idea of what they kind of do and why they exist. I didn't get the feeling like they were overselling, it didn't have a big agenda behind it to drive you toward thinking it was good or bad, or specifically other people were the Christians and stuff like that were specifically good or bad. It just kind of showed the absurdity of what they're trying to do and what they face. I don't know. Overall, I think for as far as a documentary on a subject like that is controversial, I think they did a good job in presenting it in a way that is palatable, I think, to anybody, and nobody would really think that there's an agenda behind it in the way it was edited or put together.
Mm-hmm. And I completely agree, and I would just kind of reiterate what I said earlier. As I think I mentioned earlier what my impressions of it were as an objective documentary that didn't take sides and all that. So I would just echo what both of you said as well.
I did want to mention that you got me thinking about they didn't really talk about Christians that much, right? Because we're always the documentary didn't really mention so much about who they were fighting, right? It was just implied that it was like religion, but I feel like there wasn't a whole lot of emphasis placed on the religion, their foes, so much as what they were fighting for. And I kind of,
I would say that what the documentary depicted them as fighting against is encroachment on constitutional separation of church and state and freedom of religion and freedom of religious expression. Not so much religion as such, or not so much Christianity as such. So, conceivably, liberal and moderate Christians who understand the value of the separation of church and state and the separation clause in the Constitution, and who are educated about why that's crucially important in a democracy, conceivably those Christians could see a great ally in the Satanic Temple, and they could work together.
I guess I was just saying. I mean, you're right, of course. By Christians, I guess I meant since Christianity is the dominant religion in this country.
And actually, that's a really important point too about Christianity being the dominant religion. That dominance is the reason why we've kind of chosen the figurehead of Satan as an image to ally ourselves with and identify with. Some people ask, well, why Satan? Why choose something from the Christian mythology to kind of make a stand against Christian encroachment and Christian hegemony? And the answer is because it's the dominant mythology. And as a counter stance, we're taking the dominant mythology's arch nemesis and turning that into our own thing. So.
Good point. Good point. All right, gentlemen, any final thoughts?
If you like documentaries, regardless of your persuasion and affiliation with religion, I think if you like documentaries, you should watch it. I think there's value, at least, even if you 100% oppose and disagree with the Satanic Temple. They're very much people, and they're very much people that aren't any different than you. So maybe learn from the horse's mouth instead of what your pulpit screams at you.
Yeah, good luck with that. No, but I agree completely with what you're saying. I'm just saying, and people with these like us, well, I say like us, who are able to see like things from an objective point of view, if as soon as you say the Satanic Temple and Satan's in there, you've automatically lost half your audience. And I'm not even kidding. And I'm not necessarily being derogatory, I guess, but it's not really their fault because they've been so indoctrinated with the idea that Satan is an actual embodiment. It's like he was actually a part of your life, right? He's an actual force for. I mean, these people literally think that Satan is like just stalking them, I guess. I don't know. Like,
and I mean, no, it's not their fault if that's the way they were, from day one as a child were brought up. But at some point, there is no harm in learning about something different. Like, you don't have to dump your religion. You don't have to like disown your everything about your life. But being afraid to watch a video or learn something, I don't understand that. It's like if you're Christian and you pick up the Quran, like, you're not gonna burst into flames. Like, nobody's gonna come, like, I don't know, tip over your flower vase in the middle of the night like some spirit. It's like, it's a book. It's like learning something never hurts.
If you spontaneously combust, though, that's just coincidence. It's not necessarily because you read the Quran. Or
it's impressive.
You're talking rationally. Just stop with the rat. That's what I'm saying. Especially living in the South, and I'm telling you, I'm not judging anybody. Yeah. I just, the only point I want to make is these people think just like there's like a real heaven. Like when they die, they literally think that Jesus is going to wake them up.
And you know what? I ask those Christians? I ask if there's free will in heaven, and if there is there going to be another rebellion against God and a new Satan?
You know what you sound like to them? Charlie Brown teacher. It doesn't matter. They have to figure out that for themselves. And
sure,
I'm just saying.
At the very least, like, sit around with your Christian friends and watch it to laugh at it, because
I mean, like, I'm not saying there's
expose yourself to something different.
It might be the one thing. It might get people thinking.
I mean, people like me watch pseudoscience documentaries all the time. So if I can do it, you can do it.
I love that shit.
Know your enemy, at least.
I like Soros. I like evil Soros videos. Like George Soros is
what is it
on
Soros?
YouTube? Oh my God, it's fucking very thinly veiled anti-Semitism is all it is.
You know what my current obsession is? My current obsession is all the nonsense, batshit crazy stuff about how the sun is fake.
What?
What the fuck?
Yeah.
Okay,
I fucking can't.
I got a headache. I can't. I guess, I mean, if you think the Earth's flat, then maybe you think there's a big, basically,
No, but holy shit,
a
it's
ball
right
of
there.
heat, a big heater. Then who runs the heater?
George Soros.
Yep.
Ah,
George
the
Soros
Illuminati.
is the answer to everything.
Game over. We
The
figured it out.
Illuminati. I don't know, somebody. The Bilderbergers.
The Bilderbergs.
Whatever the fuck. I don't even fucking.
Bilderbergs.
What is it? The Templar? I don't know. Rosicrucians. Whatever the fuck.
The IMF.
I have an old Templar
The World
ceremonial
Bank.
sword.
Oh, yeah, the World Bank, the IMF,
The Federal Reserve.
Federal Reserve. Yeah.
The Clintons.
Yeah, was it Alex Jones that Alex Jones claimed that Hillary Clinton was literally a demon from hell and that she smelled like sulfur?
Yes.
But he knows this bullshit. He went into court, his divorce, he had that divorce case, and he literally went into court and said, "Yeah, I'm making this shit up. It's in court documents."
Because his lawyer told him to say that so he can get off.
If you're ever feeling a little masochistic and you're a little bored, go watch the Alex Jones the full deposition video for the Sandy Hook stuff.
After this, me and the cat.
It's like 3.5 hours long of Alex Jones.
3.5. Okay, that's. I need.
Yeah, but it's in 2 parts. It's in 2 parts. You can.
Oh,
split it up.
wow.
It's
It's
entertaining.
easily digestible. Okay.
His lawyers are equally as entertaining to listen to as he is.
That sounds almost as painful as watching the 17-hour-long Kavanaugh hearings.
No, I did that.
Is
I
it
did
that
that.
long?
I did that.
Wow.
That long?
I did some of it.
No,
Yeah, it's that long.
He's pathetic. Fucking frat boy, histrionic.
I commit myself to.
No. Okay, I can't let myself go there. Anyway, that's a whole nother episode. We have to wrap it up here, though, gentlemen. But of course, we will talk again in the super secret group where we plot the destruction of Christianity and Antifa takeover.
It's coming.
Yeah, and all that good stuff. So, hail Satan! I think we can.
Hail Satan.
Hail yourself.
That's even better.
Anyway, I wish I was that powerful. So, Nate, thanks for coming on to the show. It's great.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you, indeed.
Thanks for having me.
Great fun.
It was fun.
You're actually the first interview we've had, I think, since we have started doing the duo thing or whatever. So.
True.
And you're the perfect person, I think, to have you on. Not to kiss your ass too much, but
I'm just the perfect person. Period.
There you go.
Oh, see, I like that. No, Nate, I like it. I need that. I need you to do more of that on your feed. I am awesome. I am awesome. You want everybody to tell them how awesome they are to you. You need to tell everybody else how awesome you are.
And let's give him 2 seconds to plug any meme sites what his favorite meme sites.
Oh yeah,
right now?
more than 2 seconds. Plug the things.
Do your thing.
The Romantic Nihilist. Follow it on Facebook. I'm an admin. It's probably the best. Not because I'm an admin, but because of the other people who are admins. The Romantic Nihilist is possibly the best meme site on Facebook. And also,
those bold words, sir.
Mm-hmm.
I'll endorse that statement.
I bet you will.
And follow the Psychology Babes. That's another good one. Follow Anxiety Girl. That's another good one. I've got a lot of them, but I'll keep it at that.
Okay, well, I need you to send me those because I didn't ever even heard of those, and I'm gonna put links to those on the show notes because I never even knew about those two. And of course, Leap of Doubts. You said you're off hiatus, and now I remember that you were supposed to have some dude talking about the Kennedy conspiracy.
Yep, that's coming up.
That sounds awesome because that kind of shit goes back the Bilderbergers and all the Soros stuff. I love that kind of shit.
I'm a
But
fan
he-
of that dude.
Yeah, and
Harold
but
Posner.
Yeah.
I don't know who that is, but he sounds cool. I don't.
Okay.
He's got
I'll
some
have to
good
do
stuff.
I have to research him, but
He's got a new book coming out about the pharmaceutical industry, which should be pretty good.
actually, I've got one that I haven't read yet about that kind of thing. There's a whole bunch of shit out there, especially like the opioid stuff came out. What's the one that made OxyContin? Shit, I can't remember.
Oh,
They just got sued to high heaven or whatever.
Oh my god.
Purdue Pharma, is that it? Purdue Pharma, I think it's called.
And if we're wrong, don't sue us. But yeah, that's right.
And they got away with oh my god, it was a huge fine, dude. Do you know the percentage that fine was of their fucking daily profit?
I think it was like a total.
minuscule.
It was like $500 million. They got fined.
and they make that in like fucking a month or two or something.
Yeah, they do. They do something obscene like $5 to $7 billion a year. So,
No.
the long and the short is, if you're gonna break the law, make sure you make more money than what you know you're gonna get fined, and you'll be fine.
Guillotine.
Eat the rich.
Guillotine.
Better to have
I want
one
those heads
and not need it.
That's all I'm saying.
Making
Heads
it
on bikes.
French Revolution American style.
Actually, we
was
inspired
that
him and then we
face?
fucked it up. We
Eat the rich
inspired him to
people.
do it in the first place, but we fucked it up.
Legalize
The
the
French are more
purge.
democratic than we are. Fuck.
I like it. Purge, guillotine.
Legalize.
I'm down. Okay, I'm down. We can get behind
I think it's time.
that. All right. Oh, I'm glad you made that. Just before we leave, Operation Clip Chris is this Friday. So my soldiers will no longer be fighting in the battle for making babies.
Send them home.
Send the boys back home.
Okay. Yes, I'll be getting clips. I'm sure y'all excited, so you can have. There will be no more little Chris's. No chance of little Chris's running around. I think everybody can agree that's a good thing.
So
Anyway,
One less majestic beard in the world.
perhaps you never know what kind of genes that might get like the opposite, whoever the mother is or whatever. Anyway, okay. And on that note, thank you everybody for showing up. Thanks, Lyman, for wait. Rebecca Murphy. Hello, my friend. I just saw this link and rushed here to see and support, but I'm going to have to actually watch this show later. Well, it's the thought that counts, Rebecca.
A for effort.
Okay. So until the next episode, where I'm sure you won't find out as much about my soldiers not fighting in the war anymore.
It will be about the recovery and their trip home.
You will hear about that, trust me.
I will.
Nate, thanks again for coming on. Lyman,
Thank you
thanks
for
for
having me.
being here. And he has some cocaine, so it's all fine.